Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is the first episode of our weekly podcast. We are What Woody Do, and we are discussing Woody Allen's decades in film, and this is gonna be our first episode. I am William Elvin, and here with me is my fellow Hong Kong-based artist, Q Gonzalez. Say hello to our listeners, Q.
Hey everybody! Actually, when you invited me to do this podcast, I was like, "What is this going to be?" I actually had no idea. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I called you up, because I need. I think it's gonna be interesting to have someone who has no prior knowledge of Woody's work, or if you've seen some. You probably did not realize that you've seen a Woody Allen film. It's probably one of his latest works, and obviously he's not gonna be in it, or because this is a very, very prolific filmmaker. He's a very controversial one, and we'll get there later on in his career. But it's very prolific, and his body of work is very diverse. If you've heard a lot about this man, you're gonna hear a lot about him being a master filmmaker, or one of the great American legends in film. But as we've seen tonight, as we tape this episode, kind of interesting start, right? We're going to start this podcast series, which, by the way, is available on Spotify. If you're listening to this podcast on Spotify now, other streaming services are also available. We're going to put this up on YouTube too. So if you're wherever you're listening, just follow us and subscribe, because we are going to do this weekly. But anyway, let's start the discussion. We've just seen Woody Allen's first directorial work. So this is the first time he's the writer and the director of a movie, and it starts a 50 movie run. And we've just seen Take the Money and Run. What do you think about this classic comedy? Wait, before we get there, I just want to ask you, did you have some expectations on what's this going to be?
I mean, I can't say I really didn't. Well, okay. So when I spoke to you about what the movie will be, and you said it's going to be like a straight up comedy, and I was like, okay, sure. There's a bit of expectation as to what comedies are, obviously. And I mean, I'm not exactly I'm not exactly naive about who Woody Allen was, because obviously who doesn't know Woody Allen in this day and age. But I don't have anything. I mean, I've never realized actually if I have seen any of his films. I'm pretty sure I have seen his films in the past, or maybe a couple. But when you gave that number 50, I'm like, whoa, that's pretty astounding.
It is astounding. I think up until recently, until later years, he did one movie a year.
Oh wow.
And this is 1969's Take the Money and Run. This was a 1969 film. And I did not tell you these details before we saw the movie. What I know about this movie
of course,
because I didn't want to color your judgment on
for sure.
it. But this is the first time he directed a film, and according to him in his autobiography released 2 years ago, he did not know anything about directing a film. He did not know anything. All he knew was that he was gonna be there. He was going to act in it. He wrote himself into the movie, and then he hired a stand-in, and then he looked at the camera and okay, I like this shot, and let's do it. But he did not know anything about a movie making at this
That's amazing.
point in
That's
his
amazing.
life. It is amazing. The only reason why, and this is the most, I think this is the most significant part of this discussion, is that before this, he was a writer for comedy TV shows, right?
Okay.
So he was a writer for comedy TV shows. And then he became a very famous stand-up comedian in the 60s.
Okay.
And,
Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. to me.
That makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
he was a very famous stand-up comedian. He was hired to write a movie which was titled What's New Pussycat, a few years before Take the Money and Run. And then what happened was his script was changed a lot while they were shooting the film.
Okay.
And then he promised to himself, Woody promised to himself that he's never going to do that again. If he was going to write a movie, he's also going to direct it. And he wanted to have creative control
Over everything.
over everything, and he had that throughout his whole career. He
That's
never
amazing.
once compromised. So, good or bad, in our 50 film run,
Yeah,
good
yeah.
or bad, that's the vision we're going to have.
You know the saying that you only miss the shots that you don't take, right? If I were as prolific, or at least even a fourth as prolific as Woody Allen was in his creative endeavor, I would probably have, a few hits and a few misses.
Yeah, you do a movie once a year.
exactly. One of them is at least bound to be somewhat good.
Yeah, later on he's gonna do great things. But tonight we've seen his humble beginnings, which was kind of amazing for a first time director.
For sure.
I think people thought he was gonna be the next Chaplin or the next Buster Keaton, maybe, or whatever. And if you told people, if you talked to people in 1969 and said, if we went back to 1969 and we talked to some people who saw this film and tell them that, this guy that you're watching right now is going to be one of the greatest American film directors of all time, I don't think anyone would have believed it. Not that it's a bad film, it's not. It's just hard to imagine how you go from here to something that we're going to find out later on.
Was Take the Money and Run this is you've mentioned that it's his first directorial and writing debut.
Right.
So wow, so everything that he wrote in the coming years, he also acted and directed, or is it just
no? He did not
directed and
act in. He did not act in all of them, but he wrote and directed.
Oh,
50
that's amazing.
of them. Yeah,
Damn.
he acted in some movies here and there. There's one movie where he acted and wrote but did not direct. But
That's
all the
amazing.
films that we're going to be discussing are the ones he both wrote and directed.
That's amazing.
So
That's cool.
full vision. You know what? We already have a few listeners who expressed their interest in following us weekly. So
amazing.
I'm gonna give them a little shout out. The people at the Woody Allen Appreciation Society in Facebook, and and another group called I Believe Woody. So these people are already waiting for this, right?
Oh,
And,
nice.
yeah. By the way, spoiler alert for everything that we're going to talk about. Not much for this movie. It's not a very story-driven thing. But if you haven't seen this movie and you call yourself a Woody Allen fan, then you should go back and see this, because this is the first.
if you haven't seen this movie and you call yourself a Woody Allen fan, then you're not a Woody Allen fan. I would assume.
No, no, because here's what you have to understand, and you're going to realize this later on. At some point, all these early movies, all these early comedies that he made, is gonna be pretty insignificant in the grand scheme of things.
Oh, really? Huh.
At least in my view.
Okay.
But then again, we're jumping too far ahead. I want to hear your thoughts about this classic comedy.
I came in blind as a bat with this movie. I literally had no expectations. I didn't know the year it was made. I didn't know the quality of the movie, because I mean, we watch comedies all the time. I mean, comedies in TV, in the movies. So I'm pretty. I think I have enough movie, and I mean, I have enough media experience.
Yeah.
Media consumption to know what a comedy is and what the quality. I mean, I didn't study like comedy, or I mean, nothing formally at least, but coming into that movie, kind of, it was refreshing for me to see something of that quality of quick wit.
Yeah.
In the era that it was made. It was mind-boggling to me, because while we were watching, I was kind of taking down a couple of notes, and I was doing a bit of Wikipedia research. I was wondering how old Woody Allen was in this movie. I was trying to figure those little tiny details out, and I was floored, because at the time that he made this, as you've said, it was made in 1969. I wasn't even born in that. I wasn't even thought about.
We weren't even thought about at that
time. But he was managing to make something at that age, and in the time that, I mean, it's in the 70s, right? It's the world wasn't as open as it is now. And just the timing, and I mean, that's why I said that it made sense that he was a stand-up comedian, because that's exactly how it felt. It was gag after gag after gag, and I was like, wow, this type of film was, because okay, so if you watch like a sitcom on TV, or if you watch a sitcom or a comedy like in the movies. They're not as rapid as that in terms of like punchlines. This one was, he was just throwing everything at you. Throwing everything. And like, if I would count the jokes that was just delivered, almost, it's like 100 per minute. Like, not that exaggerated, but the amount, that's just the number of jokes that was.
It's at least one joke every 2 minutes or so.
Yeah, for sure. And there are jokes that you would expect, like in some of the scenes. Obviously, you were already kind of expecting it. One particular joke that I that I was shaking my head to was that escape scene when he was
Which
in
one
prison.
of those?
No, he was in prison. The first time he was in prison, he was doing he was carving soap, and
the soap gun. Yeah,
he was staining the soap to look like a gun. And it's so tongue in cheek. It was so effective that you were like, oh no, this is not gonna be so good. And he was, and the fact that it was so deliberately made was just fantastic imagery for me. I mean, it was such a memorable scene. And that and the gag that went all through the series, I mean through the whole length of the movie, the eyeglass gag, the glasses gag. that was I was waiting for that. That was amazing.
You already knew. I don't know. I think he's going to right place like a few years after this thing. He was gonna be, because what's going to happen is that he's continuing his career as a comedian, but on the side he was writing Broadway plays on the side. But you kind of know, you kind of know that this guy has a very great sense of like putting things together, at least.
Yeah, yeah.
Like this movie is not by all stretch of imagination. It's not like a masterpiece of storytelling or whatever.
Oh,
But
for sure.
it's like everything is consistent in a sense. Right?
Yes,
Like the
I agree.
logical comic feel of the whole thing is
I
very
agree.
much,
I agree.
it's incoherently incoherent. I think that's it. I think that's how I would describe this thing.
But what I liked is that it's a film. Obviously, it's a comedy, right? But
Yeah.
it didn't feel like it was taking itself too seriously. I mean, obviously
Right.
the acting was there, but
Right.
it's like, you know how it feels when you see actors and you're in on the joke.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what it felt
how
like.
it feels,
It
yeah.
wasn't comedy that feels forced. It's
Yeah.
like I was writing down like some adjectives on my notepad, and I was like, just the absurdity of
Yeah.
the situation.
Right.
This is my, I think this is my favorite gag in
The whole movie?
in the whole movie, when they vaccinated him, and so relevant, right? Like, especially in this day and age. So
He turned
I'm
into
sorry.
a
I'm sorry.
rapper.
I'm sorry for this tiny comedic spoiler, for anyone who hasn't seen the movie.
No, I think everyone who's going to be interested in
But-
listening to us are just like, they've seen most of Woody's movies, so it's safe to spoil things.
So just that scene where, okay, he took a vaccination to to kind of shorten. Was that shorten his term, right?
For a parole.
Yeah, for his eligibility to a parole, and the only side effect was that he turned into a rabbi. He turned into a rabbi for like 3 hours. And I'm like,
3 hours. And the thing is that like you and we're gonna see a lot of this in like in his whole career. He's Jewish, obviously.
Obviously.
Obviously he's Jewish, and he just like a deviant traditional Jewish, if there's such a thing. And, there's a running joke in the whole movie where his dad is like, he's an atheist. I tried to beat God into this kid. It's like,
he's a rotten kid.
he's a rotten kid. And even the scene where he was like, he had to get the key. And the thing where he's in the Catholic Church, it's just like, and you're gonna see more of this later on, and he's gonna have fun with all these Jewish stereotypes,
Yeah, you can really feel that in the process of filmmaking. That you can see that everyone was having fun, and everyone was in on the joke. It's just so refreshing to see.
This movie is recognized by the American Film Institute as one of of their list of 100 years, 100 laughs.
Oh, really? Wow.
List of movies. It's on number 66.
Wow, that's
100 years, 100 movie quotes, also by AFI. The 100 years, 100 movie quotes. So this is not just a comedy quote list, I think.
Yeah.
It's a 100 movie quotes list, and it's nominated for one of that. And this list contains, or it was nominated with the exchange between Virgil and the bank tellers. You remember this, right? Does this look like gub or gun? because he just no, it's
Gun. It's
gun.
Gun.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I see. This is a holdup. And it's so
What's
absurd.
apt?
It's just like I don't know if Monty Python, the British sketch show, has already reached America by this time. I'm not sure, but it's kind of similar to the style of comedy the British guys are doing.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. I was
Things
going to
like
bring that up. Yeah.
yeah, like things like is this the argument clinic? Things like that, right? Is this the
Yeah, yeah.
argument? No, it's not that. No, it's the argument clinic. It feels like that.
Yeah.
It very much feels like that, and I think the next 3 to 4 Woody Allen films would be that.
Okay.
Another thing you brought up, Q, when we were watching the film, is that you were surprised about how kind of risque this
Yeah.
was for its
Yeah,
genre
'cause-
and its period, right?
For sure. Because there was this particular scene. There was a love scene, and I wasn't expecting that one from a comedy. although it was very tastefully done. I would say.
Yeah,
But
right.
but for its era, like it's on the fringes of the 70s,
Yeah.
and I don't think that even for a comedy it would be allowed to have those kind of scenes.
It was kind of steamy, right? It's not. It's
It
it's
was
not
kind
just
of
like
steamy.
It's,
Yeah.
it's not just a kiss and then a blackout.
Yeah, exactly. There was no assumption involved. Everything was pretty
Right.
explicit.
Right.
So I was actually quite surprised that they managed to put that in there. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, there's a lot of kind of like quirkiness in the way that they shot it. Like, there's a lot of
Yeah.
like close-ups and
Yeah.
weird kissing portions.
And the punchline was the Woody Allen eyeglasses were transferred to Janet Margolin's face. That's the punchline of
Yeah, exactly.
of the whole thing. Yeah.
but but yeah, I mean, as I've said, I was quite pleasantly surprised that he managed to put that scene in there, and I wasn't expecting that, not at all.
He will be pushing the boundaries even further by the time we reach, I think, the third movie. Yeah. Yeah, because the third movie's title is Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Sex But Were Afraid to Ask.
Ooh.
And so this is going to be a very, very interesting filmography, to say the least. And, well, of course, the lovely Janet Margolin, we're going to see her, I think, if I'm not
Is she-
mistaken, she's going to return to one more Woody Allen film,
Oh,
if I'm
that's-
not
that's- yeah.
mistaken. Yeah.
Yeah,
So we're going to see her again.
She pretty.
Yeah, she was very pretty. She's very pretty. Also, another tidbit. You remember the one of the final scenes where they showed this interview with a woman who said she did not believe that he was a criminal. She thought he was just an idiot.
Oh yeah.
Right? Yeah. That's Louis Lasser, his ex-wife.
Oh,
Yeah, and
okay.
she was already his ex-wife by that time, and I think Louis Lasser was improvising in that scene. So this is it's incredible, and we're gonna see her. We're gonna see her again in the next film, I think, because the next film that we're going to discuss is Bananas with Woody Allen and Louis Lasser. This is gonna be interesting, and then we go to Everything You Wanted to Know About Sex, But Were Afraid to Ask. So he is going to be pushing a lot of boundaries in terms of risque material, and I think it's going to shape his public persona for the next
Yeah.
4 decades or so.
No, but it's also interesting that you brought it up that they were already broken up.
Yeah.
by the time that this movie was filmed, because it really felt like that. Like it the words that were coming out of her mouth felt real.
And the way
you
she
know how
says,
it is.
the way she says, "Oh, I think he's a genius. There's a
Yeah.
mind that goes on." But I thought he was an idiot.
Yeah, exactly. So I couldn't put my finger on why it felt so genuine. And now I and now I know.
But the interesting thing is, I think he is friends with a lot of his
Exes.
former wives and girlfriends, except Mia
That's amazing.
Farrow, obviously. But yeah, he's friends with a lot of with almost all of them, I think, except for Mia Farrow. But we'll get to that. That's way
Way
the
into the
future
future.
from
Yeah.
where we are right now. This is going to be a retrospective of some sorts.
We're in the first decade.
We're just in the first film,
Exactly.
but we haven't. I don't think there's anything to dive deep into in this film, but that was a fun experience. That was a fun
Yeah.
experience. It's going to be much more substantial as the films as we progress through his career. But what is your verdict out of 10?
Whew.
Take the money and run.
Take the money and run. For me, I honestly I really enjoyed the film. It was refreshing. It was funny. It was very playful. Uh, Obviously, there's a lot of gap in terms of like how movies are made in this. I mean, in the present day versus how they were made then. Okay, going back to that, I notice a lot of the films whenever I watch like old movies by other directors, by other actors, I notice that a lot of them take take a lot of time like caressing certain plot points. So there's a lot of the movies in older movies before take longer in terms of
Yeah.
how they develop the film, whereas in the current Marvel age of cinematography, everything's just so rapid. And
Right,
for
right.
this movie, it felt more like it was current than it was old.
Oh, really?
At least to
Really?
me. At least to me, just because of how rapid the punchlines were,
Yeah,
how
right,
many
right,
the
right.
jokes were, I would think it didn't drag out as much as I expected it to be. Because for most movies, I at least most old movies that I try to rewatch, I kind of have the expectation that oh geez, it's gonna be dragging.
Yeah.
It's gonna drag out. It's you have that impression in your head where oh this was such a good movie, and then when you rewatch it, oh it wasn't that good.
Yeah.
But
Probably because the
somehow
perspective has changed, right?
precisely,
The way
precisely,
you look at edits
correct,
today,
correct.
very different
So
from how they did things back then.
so me watching Take the Money and Run, it didn't feel that way. It I felt that it kind of I kind of got into it easily rather than my expectations being oh it's going to be an old film by this person that I don't really know, but it was actually quite enjoyable. So out of 10, 10 being the highest, I would say I'm going to score this movie 7.5 to 8.
That is quite high for a
Yeah.
first time director, right? This is a first time
Oh
director
yeah.
we're talking
Oh yeah.
about.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, and we're going to have a lot of twists and turns, and definitely ups and downs in his
For
career.
sure.
But
For sure.
always, it's going to be very interesting and very insightful. What do you expect? Because remember when I called you up and I laid out this thing, and I said it's a very diverse filmography, and there are some points we're going to be baffled by the decision of
Okay.
like, okay, so that last film was that, and he followed it up with this. So we're gonna have a lot of that in our
Oh, okay,
journey,
okay.
but
That's can't wait for that.
but I think what's gonna be interesting is I would always ask you about what to expect in the next
Well,
movie.
what my expectations would be for
Yeah,
okay.
after this
So
film,
okay, so you mentioned the title that the next film would
Bananas.
be Bananas. It's very hard to make a sound expectation with that title in mind. but but aside from monkeys and gorillas, I would basing this expectation from the title, just the word bananas. I expect some craziness involved. You know
craziness.
how the expression "you're bananas"
Yeah,
or
you're bananas. Yeah. So you're
so
gonna play all that. Yeah. Oh,
that's
oh, for our listeners, I would just have to put it out there. Q does not read about the films beforehand,
oh
right?
no,
So he
nothing.
wants to go in blind as a bat every freaking time.
Yeah, the only time I would probably be reading is when I'm already watching it. So
Ah,
as
right, right, right,
as
right.
as I'm watching these the movies, like what I did a while ago when we were watching Take the Money and Run, I was googling like small tidbits, but I have no idea. I mean, I'm like, oh, who is this? Who's the cast, or
Yeah,
who played this guy, or whatever. But I would never read the synopsis of anything that I need to watch, because that, I mean, in the age of like movie trailers where everything is just pieced, you already have kind of a glimpse of the movie in the 30 seconds that it's presented to you in a trailer.
right. Yeah,
I don't want that spoiler.
yeah,
I want to
yeah.
see it as blind as a bat, and with like zero expectations going forward. So, whatever feedback you would be hearing from me is feedback that I haven't. That was basically formed in the last hour that I've seen the movie.
Yeah, it's off the cuff. Like everything is off
Yes,
the cuff with some
exactly.
tidbits from Google and Wikipedia here
Yeah,
and
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
But this is gonna be a very honest conversation every
Mhm.
time, and we're gonna go to like controversial territory later on where it's unavoidable when you're talking
Yep.
about an artist like Woody Allen.
Mhm.
There are, you mentioned the cast. You're looking up Janet Margolin, and the cast of Take the Money and Run, but later on you're gonna see familiar faces. Later on you're gonna see
Mm-mm.
Liam Neeson in here. You're going to see Leonardo
Oh,
DiCaprio in here. You're gonna
wow.
see
Okay, cool, cool,
Madonna
cool.
in here. Yeah, it's
That's
it's a
amazing.
who's who of
Yeah,
of
of
familiar
Hollywood.
and
That's cool.
of Hollywood. So it's this is the start of our journey, and we enjoyed it so much. I think it's safe to say that we are enjoying it. We are going to do this every Wednesday, right? So Wednesday, wherever you listen to your podcast.
Mhm.
Spotify, other streaming services. We're going to put it on YouTube, and we're gonna promote it on the Woody Allen support pages, for the fan pages and the fan groups. So thank you very much for supporting us. Uh, if you have the time to subscribe and follow, we'd really appreciate that, right, Q?
Yeah, and if we have listeners who would want to suggest a way or a movie that would, kind of support uh, this experience, or
Right,
elevate this experience, or make this
right,
experience
right.
better, please do reach out to us. I think we have an email ready
Yeah, we have an
for anyone who would
email.
want to reach out.
Yeah, what would he do? What would he do at gmail.com?
What would
So
you do
yeah,
at gmail.com? Okay, so
yeah, or you
if
can post your comments. I think the Spotify link from Anchor, I think Anchor or
mhm.
Spotify, they have a feature where you could leave messages and you could converse with us. If you're watching on YouTube this audio podcast with a picture of Woody, we're not gonna put our faces this time. It's not about us. A picture of Woody in there, or the film poster, or whatever Q could cook up for visuals.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been William Elvin and Q.
this has been Q. And I hope you guys join us next time as we discover and enjoy the world of Woody Allen.
The Woodyverse. Restore the Woodyverse, man. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again next